Right now you are not bored. You are watching this. Your brain is engaged. Information is coming in. Everything is fine. But you know exactly what boredom feels like. That heavy, restless, itchy feeling when nothing seems worth doing. When time slows down to almost nothing. When you are trapped in a moment that will not end. And here is what almost nobody realizes about that feeling. It is one of the most powerful forces in all of human history. Boredom built civilizations. Boredom invented art. Boredom drove humans to explore the entire surface of the earth just to have something to do. And in the modern world where we have more entertainment than any generation that has ever lived, boredom is quietly doing something to our brains that scientists are genuinely alarmed about. Today we are going to answer the question nobody thinks is worth asking. What is boredom? Where does it come from? What does it actually do to your brain? And why does it matter so much more than you think? Let us start at the beginning. Your brain is the most energy-hungry organ in your body. It makes up about 2% of your body weight. But it consumes roughly 20% of all the energy you produce. Every single day. Whether you are solving complex problems or lying on the sofa staring at the ceiling. And here is the critical thing about your brain that explains everything about boredom. It was not built to rest. Your brain was built to process, to solve, to connect, to predict, to plan. It is a meaning-making machine that runs constantly and it needs input to work with. When that input disappears, when nothing is happening, nothing is demanding your attention, nothing is stimulating enough to engage, your brain does not simply relax. It panics. Not dramatically. Not like a fear response. But quietly, underneath your awareness, your brain registers the lack of stimulation as a problem that needs to be fixed. And it sends you a signal to fix it. That signal is boredom. Boredom is not the absence of feeling. It is a feeling. A specific, biologically generated signal your brain produces when it decides the current situation is not worth your attention and something better needs to be found. Think of it like hunger. Hunger is not the absence of food. It is your body sending you a signal: find food, you need it, go now. Boredom is your brain sending you a signal: find stimulation, you need it, go now. It is a motivational state. And like hunger, it is genuinely uncomfortable because it is designed to be. Discomfort makes you act. If hunger was pleasant, you would never eat. If boredom was pleasant, you would never do anything. But here is where it gets fascinating. Scientists used to think boredom was simply a lack of brain activity. The brain doing nothing. Idling. Like a car engine at a traffic light. They were completely wrong. In 2001, a neuroscientist named Marcus Raichle at Washington University made an accidental discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about the resting brain. He was scanning people's brains while they performed tasks and comparing it to their brains doing nothing. He expected the doing nothing brain to be quiet, to show low activity across the board. Instead, he found something extraordinary. When people were not doing any specific task, when they were just sitting quietly with nothing to focus on, a completely different set of brain regions switched on. Powerfully. Consistently. In a way that had never been noticed before. He called it the default mode network. The default mode network is a system of brain regions that activates specifically when you are not focused on the outside world. When you are daydreaming. When you are mind-wandering. When you are bored. And what does this network actually do? It processes your memories. It imagines future scenarios. It thinks about other people, their feelings, their motivations, their perspectives. It works on creative problems. It connects unrelated ideas in new ways. It builds your sense of self, your understanding of who you are. In other words, when your brain appears to be doing nothing, it is actually doing some of its most important work. The daydreaming brain is not a lazy brain. It is a deeply busy brain working on the things that matter most. And boredom is what switches it on. Now, here is something that will genuinely surprise you. Some of the greatest ideas in human history came directly from boredom. Isaac Newton was sitting in a garden doing nothing when an apple fell and he began thinking about gravity. Not working. Not solving a problem. Just sitting there with nothing else to demand his attention. Archimedes discovered the principle of water displacement while sitting in a bath doing nothing in particular and suddenly made a connection his focused working mind had missed entirely. Einstein said his best thinking happened not at his desk but during long walks when his mind was free to wander. This is not coincidence. When the brain is bored, the default mode network takes over and starts making connections between ideas that focused thinking keeps separate. The focused brain is like a spotlight, it sees one thing very clearly. The bored brain is like a floodlight, it illuminates everything at once. And in that wide, wandering, unfocused state, unexpected connections happen. Problems that seemed impossible suddenly have solutions. Ideas that would never have met in a focused mind collide in a bored one and produce something new. Creativity needs boredom the way a fire needs oxygen. A 2014 study at the University of Central Lancashire gave participants a boring task, copying numbers from a phone book for 15 minutes. Then they were given a creative challenge. They massively outperformed participants who went straight into the creative challenge without the boring warm-up. The boredom had switched on the default mode network. And the default mode network had quietly been preparing creative solutions the whole time. But boredom is not always productive. Because the same signal that drives Newton to think about gravity also drives someone else to reach for their phone. To eat when they are not hungry. To pick a fight with someone they love. To take risks they would never normally take. Research published in the journal Science in 2014 found something almost unbelievable. Participants were left alone in a room with nothing to do for 15 minutes. No phone. No book. Nothing. Just sitting quietly with their own thoughts. And they were given a button that would deliver a mild electric shock to themselves if they pressed it. 2/3 of men and 1/4 of women chose to shock themselves rather than sit quietly with nothing to do. They chose physical pain over boredom. Let that sink in. The discomfort of being alone with nothing to do was so unbearable that actual physical pain was preferable. This tells you something important about how powerful boredom is as a motivational force. And it tells you something even more important about what happens when that force has nowhere constructive to go. Boredom that cannot find healthy stimulation does not simply disappear. It finds unhealthy stimulation instead. Studies consistently show that high levels of chronic boredom are linked to increased rates of gambling, substance abuse, overeating, aggressive behavior, and depression. Bored people make worse decisions. They take more risks. They are more impulsive. They are less able to think about long-term consequences. And here is the part that connects this to the modern world in a way that should make you stop and think. We have never had less boredom in human history. And we have never had more of the problems boredom is supposed to prevent. Think about every moment in your day where boredom used to live. Waiting for a bus. Sitting in a queue. Eating alone. Lying in bed before sleep. Walking somewhere without headphones. Every single one of those moments, every gap, every pause, every quiet second is now filled. Immediately. Automatically. By a phone in your pocket that offers infinite stimulation on demand. We have eliminated boredom. And in doing so we may have eliminated something essential. Because those boring gaps were when the default mode network got to work. When the mind wandered. When creativity happened. When memories were processed. When the brain did its quiet maintenance work. A 2017 study found that teenagers who spent more time on social media reported higher levels of boredom. Not less. More. Because the constant low-level stimulation of scrolling, likes, comments, videos, posts is just enough to prevent the brain from switching into default mode but not enough to actually satisfy it. The brain gets neither rest nor deep engagement. It gets stuck in a kind of stimulation limbo. Junk food for the mind. You keep eating but you never feel full. And the result is a generation that is simultaneously the most stimulated and the most bored in human history. But here is the hopeful part. Because understanding what boredom actually is a signal, not a punishment, changes everything about how you respond to it. The next time you feel bored and reach for your phone, pause. Just for a moment. Because that feeling is your brain telling you something. It is saying the current situation is not meeting your needs and something needs to change. And the most powerful response to that signal is not to silence it with a screen. It is to listen to it. Ask yourself, what does my brain actually want right now? Sometimes the answer is rest. Sometimes it is connection. Sometimes it is creative work. Sometimes it is movement. And sometimes, if you just sit with the boredom long enough, uncomfortable as it is, the default mode network switches on and your brain starts doing something remarkable all by itself. It starts making your next big idea. Scientists at the University of York in 2019 found that people who were better at tolerating boredom, who could sit with it without immediately escaping, showed higher levels of creativity, better emotional regulation, and stronger mental health overall. Boredom tolerance is a skill. And like all skills, it gets stronger the more you practice it. So here is what we know. Boredom is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is not a problem to be solved with your phone. It is one of the oldest and most important signals your brain produces. A signal that drove human beings to explore, to invent, to create, to connect. Every great work of art began with someone who had nothing to do. Every scientific breakthrough began with a mind that was allowed to wander. Every meaningful conversation began with two people who were not distracted by something else. We live in a world that is terrified of boredom. That treats every quiet moment as a problem to be filled. That has built entire industries worth billions of dollars to make sure you are never bored for a single second of your day. And in doing so, it has taken something away from you. Not your entertainment. Not your convenience. Your wandering mind. The most creative, most insightful, most deeply human part of you. And the good news, the genuinely good news, is that it is still there. Waiting. All you have to do is put the phone down. And be bored. If this made you think about something differently, our next video asks a question just as strange: why do we dream? And what do dreams actually mean? Subscribe to Franca. We will see you there.